Hello everyone and welcome to our Survive This Crit Spooktacular Edition 2025, where this year we take a deep dive into not just the story of Frankenstein, but the whole genre and pop culture impact of Frankenstein as a whole. We look at multiple movies. So, thank you all, and let's dive right in. The first movie in 1931 was that "It's Alive" scene, that's portrayed in pop culture so often in other iterations, even like in other Frankenstein movies. And it's fun, it's great. Honestly, here's my opinion. So I feel like we do have to do the due diligence of like ranking the Frankenstein doctors while we go through this. And I rate Frankenstein, which is another thing that's different about the book. They switched the character names of Victor and Henry. So
that's
in
so
the
confusing.
movie, I know, I was confused at it for like
are you
first few
saying the
minutes.
1931 film, his name is Henry Frankenstein?
Yes.
Okay, so give me like your opinion on that film as we're gonna step into officially the films of this series.
I definitely like this movie. I feel like it's a hard one to not like, mostly because the plot is simple yet well developed. It's not as sophisticated as say the novel, but it's a great monster story that still kind of builds on some of the elements from the original novel, which, funny enough, based off of a play for Frankenstein. And the movie was first made because earlier that year, 1931, on Valentine's Day, if you recall, Kylie, that's when the original Dracula movie came
I was
out.
not alive. Oh, Dracula.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Recall, because that's when Dracula came out, and last year we had our Spooktacular on vampires. Universal saw the financial success of Dracula, and decided to keep striking while the iron was hot. So they decided to adopt another monster and turn it into a movie. So they went with Frankenstein. And so within less than a year, they had the whole movie made. They filmed.
That's crazy.
They filmed like the first like couple months of the summer, and then had the thing out and released by Thanksgiving of 1931. They were on top of it, Kylie.
I'm like, logistically, my brain is hurting trying to think about, because that's like an 89-minute movie. It's a full movie. Oh, it's 70 minutes, so it's a little shorter, but it's still like, it's an over an hour long movie that they made from the summer and then released it in that winter is insane.
Exactly. It's crazy. But it came out so well, and I like it so much. More specifically, I like Dr. Frankenstein in this one a lot more than Victor Frankenstein in the novel, because he's not as much of what's the right word to say here? He's not as much of an asshole.
No, that's
he's not so dramatic. He is dramatic in the sense of like, he's alive.
He's alive. I can't. Well, I love that his wife and his like.
Look, it's moving. It's alive. It's alive. It's moving. It's alive. Oh, it's alive. It's alive. It's alive. It's alive. Oh, in the name of God. Now I know what it feels like to be God. Oh.
Best friend are there too during that, and they're like, what?
Yes, you know what? That's what I like about him more, is that he involves his friends and loved ones more. Victor decides, for whatever reason, like, there's this monster that I cannot beat by myself. So what am I going to do? Not get help from friends and family. I know I can't beat it by myself, and I'm just going to take him on by myself anyways. Like, dude, you knew that on the day or the night of your wedding that the monster was going to kill your wife, and you still had the wedding anyways because you were afraid of how you're going to hurt her feelings.
He's dumb, though, because he was like, in the book, he's like, the monster's going to kill me. Like, This monster is so obsessed with me. He's gonna kill. Not reading the message in the book of like, I don't remember it off the top of my head, but it was something very vague along the line that could have been either your bride is gonna get murdered or you, and then he just leaves his bride just like he does in the movie, thinking like it'll be fine. The arrogance.
Yeah, he's very arrogant. He's still arrogant in the movie, but he learns his lesson and involves his friends in the movie, which I appreciated. So he learns his lesson better than the original Dr. Frankenstein.
So the takeaway point is, if you're gonna do something stupid, make sure to include your friends.
Yes, get help. Help always helps.
Get help. So I liked this film too. I think the 1931 films, like the score is just amazing. Like I could dance away on that score day or night. Mm-hmm. And I think it did a good job of following the book too. Like it hit the main plot points. Like there's so much more nuance that happens in the book, and the book is very, very slow compared to what you see in the screen, because it'd be like 40 minutes of just watching the monster stare at one family, trying to understand what's going on. This particular film and this particular Dr. Frankenstein, I liked him a little more as well, and maybe that's just because we don't know as much of his internal dialogue. But in the book, it made me mad hearing like how he was referring to this thing that he created as this like abhorrish monster being in his way. Like, you created this. This is your responsibility. You have to deal with it now. And then, you know, for like the bulk of the book, he's like, not my problem. I like that in the movie he was more direct and like willing to actually deal with the problem. But as a whole, like this Henry Frankenstein is up on the list, certainly higher than Dr. Victor Frankenstein. And I would give this movie like a solid 3.5 out of 5. I really enjoyed it.
I'd probably put it at a 4 out of 5, only because in my mind I like to elevate the classics, but I guess that's a sign of prejudice in a sense. Not bad prejudice necessarily.
No, it's not a classic
movie.
It is.
The second I hear a movie's a classic, like a classic black and white movie, if I hear it's like famous, immediately I'm like, oh, this is beautiful. I haven't even watched it yet, but I bet you it's gonna be good. Arts.
The arts. It's honor alive. The arts here. It's alive. No, it really is a classic. And I think that would bring us to our next film, Bride of Frankenstein, where in the beginning of the movie, they pick up where they left off as if Mary Shelley's telling this story to Percy and to Lord Byron. And the man that plays Lord Byron is just...
astonishing creature.
I, Lord Byron?
Frightened of thunder, fearful of the dark, and yet you have written a tale that sent my blood into icy creeps. Look at her, Shelley. Can you believe that bland and lovely brow conceived of Frankenstein? A monster created from cadavers out of rifled graves?
His just gravitas for life. Like, they cast this man so well. I was obsessed with him. He had like 3 lines, and he was like, read us away. Read the story of how Frankenstein was so horrific. And it's just incredible.
He ate it up.
He ate and left no crumbs. But Bride of Frankenstein, what were your thoughts? Because in the book, for those of you who haven't read it, they do say the monster comes to the doctor with his one request. Please make me a mate. Make me someone I can be with, and we will go off the grid and we won't bother you forever. I feel like it's important to provide the context. Dr. Frankenstein struggles with this morally, and then he's like, fine, I'll make it. And then when he is in the midst of making it, the monster sees that he's making it. The monster's been stalking him all this way. And Dr. Frankenstein, being the asshole that he was, tears this monster that he's creating to pieces. He tears the woman that he's creating to pieces. And the monster is reasonably upset and goes and kills a bunch of people. The end. But the Bride of Frankenstein is like very, very loosely based upon that, essentially.
Yeah, and what I liked about the Bride of Frankenstein, So, in general, first off, I should say, overall, I liked this movie. Again, is a great story. Hits on some very iconic monster again, and it has some very clear, very direct, very well plotted out plot points that they're hit at a good beat. The movie's well paced. Uh, it doesn't linger too much on any one detail, and just visually, it looks great. Like I love the one of the things I noted was like the special effects of this film, with I'm trying to remember his name. He's more the villain in this movie, Doctor Pretorius, Doctor Pretentious.
Dr. Pretentious. I wonder if that's after the book, because there is like two doctors that he studies under in the book.
Is the scene where Doctor Pretorius meets with Frankenstein for, I believe it's like the second time. He invites him to his lab and shows him that he too has created life, but unlike Henry Frankenstein, he didn't create life from death. He grew life, and he made like little miniature people. And so, like, just that whole effect, just thinking in the context, like, this is 1935, and they're pulling off that, like, forced perspective of little miniature people. I just thought it was very interesting, and I liked it. I was impressed with how good it looked.
I really liked that too. I didn't forget about that, but now that you bring it up again, that was really fascinating, because I, similar to you, thought about the time period. It's 1935. Like, how exactly are they pulling off this forced perspective? It was visually very interesting. My one downside was, like, I actually saw The Bride and the Monster at Universal Studios last time I went, and my father-in-law actually gave the monster a high five, which I thought was hilarious. But leading up to this movie, I have this mug. I think the aesthetic of The Bride is incredible. She looks amazing. She has like 3 lines in the whole movie, and most of it is just screaming at the monster. Because when she's created, she, like, viscerally does not want to be with him. And that, that is, like, just an interesting concept. And I kind of wanted to dig into that a little bit.
That's one of the things I'm excited about too. Is I was doing my research yesterday about Bride of Frankenstein specifically, because I just felt like I needed a bit more background information on it. First off, I don't know if you noticed this. I didn't realize it until I had it explained to me. But the woman who plays Mary Shelley in Bride of Frankenstein is also the Bride of Frankenstein herself.
I did notice that. She has a very distinct look.
Yeah, her name is Elsa Lancaster, plays the Bride of Frankenstein and Mary Shelley in the movie. And she was chosen specifically for her face, similar to Boris Karloff. The most interesting thing I found out was how it was explained to me how she's such a feminist icon. She stood for the idea of women not having to accept the roles that are assigned to them, which I liked because I apply that to a more general sense. It's a universal lesson that was especially important for women at the time, but it can be applied to men and women of this day. Sometimes we have a role that people tell us like we have to accept, or that is thrusted upon us. And, we as people, it's important to know that like we have the ability to reject it. And oh, you know what? So I should add this detail as well. One of the reasons why I like it is because later on, there's a lot of fans of the movie who will then go on to ship Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein, which I'm assuming you know what shipping means, right, Kylie?
Yes, I am. I'm old enough to know what that means.
All right. I don't like to make assumptions, but anyway, so people like shipping them, and I'm like, how interesting that even though that there's a pivotal scene in the movie where she rejects the monster, there are still people who want them to end up together. And I thought to myself, that's great, because how you don't get that lesson a lot in real life, which is it's okay to reject and criticize something that you're told about but also there's something to be said of giving it a chance.
Yeah.
Don't just reject something. Don't just reject something for the sake of rejecting it, but take a moment to actually think about it, to ponder it and decide for yourself whether or not you truly want this, which is something that I really loved. I resonated with that. That's not necessarily the movie itself. It's a little
But
bit
it
farther
is a
beyond, but I just
takeaway.
like that. It is a takeaway that I really like, and so I like that idea of the the bride rejecting the monster, especially if there's the freedom of interpretation that she can later on go on to, learn to love the monster, because we see at the end the monster's actually he's more the hero in this
Yeah, he
story,
is more of a
the
hero in this
sacrificial.
film. Yeah, he has like
Hmm.
the sacrificial love because the real villain, the other doctor, Dr. Pretorius or whatever, he is the one who pressures Dr. Frankenstein to be like, let's, you made one, why not make another? But I like that the ultimate desire of the monster was pure. Again, this is kind of why I see the monster more so as an anti-hero rather than a villain, especially in this film, because he's not like we have this scene I think with the blind man, and you see the monster just trying to navigate society with spaces that would be accepting of him. And then as he goes into each space, like, we're not surprised to learn that, of course, he's not accepted in that space. So I think, similar to you, I liked this one, but I wish there had been more of the bride, because I think, like you were saying, they ship the bride and the monster so much. Like, on all the merch, other than literally this mug that I have right here, you see the monster and the bride together. And I think it would have been interesting to see more so where their growth and their compatibility actually went as characters. Because obviously, in the book, we don't get that. And it would have been cool to see where that could have gone. And obviously, this version, too, is a very loose interpretation of the book. So,
Yeah, but I like how it still kind of
it's still
adopts
on
some of the
theme.
plot points that
Yeah, like the
weren't
blind
in the
man. That's
original.
like a huge plot point of the original book.
Yeah, the blind man that he befriends, because you get that moment with the Lacey in the novel that Frankenstein, just for like a few short moments, like befriends the Lacey. We get that. We get obviously, creating the female creature. Just, like I said, those plot points that weren't exactly in the first movie that are just kind of missing. We get to see some of that. Kind of completes the picture a little bit.
And I like this version of Dr. Frankenstein too, because he does have morally quite a bit remorse beforehand. Unfortunately, he gives in to the temptation, which is very human, to create life again. But I do appreciate
I would
that.
say he gives into the temptation as much as he's forced to do it by Dr. Pretorius. He convinces the monster to kidnap Elizabeth.
Oh, that's right. You know what? You're right. He didn't have a choice. Yeah, so he
He didn't
basically
really have a choice.
Yeah, that's fair.
He was
So
curious. The movie makes the point of like showing that he was curious, but ultimately he makes the decision on his own to not want to create the monster, the female creature, and so Dr. Pretorius has to step in and convince the original monster to
And
kidnap
Dr.
Elizabeth.
Pretorius manipulates the hell out of the original monster, because the original monster's just chilling. He's like, "Hey, you, go do some crimes for me," and the monster's like, "Okay, sure.
You gave me food. You gave me wine. Sure."
Yeah, exactly. Well, so for this film as a whole, I would give it like a 3 out of 5. I think I liked it a little bit less because it did play into some more unrealistic themes, like with building these like tiny miniature people that like reanimating them. I wish the bride was in it more. Like, I would have loved to have seen their story actually unfold more, because like you see the bride around the parks, you see the bride in a lot of media depicting it, but you don't actually see much of her. And I would have loved to have seen her more in general.
Yeah, I can agree with you of the sense like it would have been interesting to see that a little bit more. However, I think it just it really exemplifies how good the acting was and how good the movie was to have a character that's only on screen for such a short period of time and yet goes down into the history of horror as a genre almost as equally famous as the original monster itself,
True.
even though it's its own original creation by Universal, technically.
That is true. I do
So
appreciate that.
I've heard people say that they like the sequel, more than the original movie. I would say it's about the same, so I would give it a 4 out of 5.
All right.
So
That's
still
solid.
a good movie.
Still a good movie. No, it was a good movie. Like, it was honestly hard to rank these negatively, because, like, I think last year, if anyone goes back to our vampire deep dives, they'll see that there was a much wider range of good and bad vampire movies, because there are so many. And there's a decent chunk of Frankenstein and Frankenstein's Monsters movies, but there's not nearly as many. I think the next one on our list is Son of Frankenstein.
So I'm really interested to hear about this because I hadn't watched this, but you said you did, and you said I don't think if you said it or if I heard it, but this is another like continuation of the same line of movies.
Yeah,
so I want to hear about this.
It came out 4 years later. It came out in 1939, so we're still in the 1930s here. I loved this one. It reminded me a lot of the 1970s Young Frankenstein. And I think Young Frankenstein took a lot of inspiration from this movie because it was based on the son of Dr. Frankenstein moving back to the town where he had originally created the monster. And of course, the town rejects him. They're like, we don't want this. I don't know if you remember from the 1974 Frankenstein, the police officer with the wooden arm. Oh, yeah. That young Frankenstein. The inspector. So there is the inspector in this one too, with the wooden arm. Oh. And it's like, that actually was kind of fun because I could see that direct inspiration happening. And I think they spent more time breaking down the science because this is the son of Frankenstein, I believe, learning the works of his father. So there's more of a breakdown of how the human body works and like how the science works. So that was really interesting.
Oh.
Because he basically, he meets Igor. And Igor's like, yo, you want to continue your father's work? And he's like, I'm not really into that. And it doesn't take much convincing, of course, for him to be like, maybe I should see what my father was all about. And then they reanimate the monster, because the monster, he wasn't dead, but he had been like shot and he was like in a coma essentially. This Frankenstein, the doctor, had like the arc ever. He went from being like the hero where you kind of feel bad for him that he's not welcomed into town, and then he's like, at least in regards to, you know, I'm pro monster. Basically, as a spoiler alert here, skip the next 10 seconds if you don't want a spoiler to this movie. The monster gets drop kicked into a vat of steaming sulfur, because apparently that's what the laboratory was built over in the original movie. My gosh. He gets drop kicked into there by the Dr. Frankenstein, who comes swinging in on a vine because the monster had stolen his child, but not like really stolen. He had stolen him to get attention because Igor was killed, and like the servant was killed. So there was like murders happening, but I was bummed that the bride wasn't in it. Because so I pictured this film was going to be like a Seed of Chucky type of thing, where the bride and the monster attempt to procreate. It wasn't that. It was literally the son of Dr. Frankenstein moving into town.
The title of the movie is Son of Frankenstein. Kylie, are you one of those fools who thinks that Frankenstein is the name of the monster?
You've heard me grammatically saying this whole time that I've been referring to monster and Frankenstein correctly. I am not one of those.
But actually, this is a quick side note, Kylie. How long ago was it when you first learned that Frankenstein wasn't the name of the monster?
Probably back in high school when I read it.
Same.
Like a long time
Freshman
ago.
year of high school.
yeah, like probably sophomore year for me. And
Mm-hmm.
I really liked this book in high school too. But what I will add on is this movie was really interesting. It was a little bit more crazy. Like it does, the 1974 film is like a better version of the 1939 film, in my
Yeah, it
opinion.
sounds like what
It's
you're
very,
describing
very
is
similar.
they're very parallel.
Yeah,
I like
except for
that.
the difference in the 1939 one is that he had a wife and a kid. So
Mhm.
there was like more for him to deal with morally, and like the little boy is basically the one who rats out Dr. Frankenstein to the inspector, and he's like, "Yeah, there was a big man in my room, Daddy," and he's like,
Does he actually sound
"Oh,
like that?
basically, yeah," and and Dr. Frankenstein's like, "Oh, these kids and their imaginations." And, you know, of course, the inspector's like, actually, I have to look into this at this point. There's an interesting conversation of, like, the line between protecting family and going after the monster. Like, the child almost, at least in the doctor's mind, dies because the monster takes him away, which the monster and the child were, like, kind of buddies. So it wasn't necessarily life-threatening from their perspective, but Dr. Frankenstein assumed it was, which led him to being drop kicked into bubbling sulfur, which I will say was the weirdest part of that movie, because I was like, we've seen the last two movies of this taking place at the same laboratory. Where did this like sulfur lava come from?
They added it when it was an addition.
It was
You know,
an addition.
people are
It was
always
an add-on. They
renovating.
built it on.
They
So
wanted
yeah,
to increase the real estate cost, so someone put it on later on. There's a whole like several years.
yeah. They
This-
wanted it to smell like rotten eggs everywhere you went.
They wanted it to really seem like it was a very expensive lab, and every expensive lab I've learned from comic books always has a vat of acid in it.
I would give this one like a solid 3 out of 5, maybe 3.5. It was like very plot wise, very interesting, and it made me laugh a little bit more because it was a lot like the 1974 Frankenstein.
I am excited now. I kind of want to see this movie, The Son of Frankenstein.
It's
More
definitely worth
specifically,
the watch.
I would love to see a version where you dub over all the kids' voices, because I loved your kid voice specifically for 1930s films. It sounds like it's spot on, and I couldn't tell the difference between that voice and the actual voice of a child, specifically in that era of movies.
Daddy, there's lions, tigers, and a very large man in my bedroom. That was like essentially like all he said in that whole movie. He said the most out of pocket things at times, and I was like, I love this kid and I hate him at the same time. So yes, I will be doing a dubbed over version for the ultimate fans of Frankenstein.
I love
Meaning
that.
Nick.
Son of Frankenstein, Kylie's version.
Exactly. But as we move into 1974, obviously there were some other films in the 1950s, 1960s. We didn't watch them all. Get over it. 1974, Young Frankenstein.
Yes, this was my most anticipated and the most exciting one I saw. I love Young Frankenstein. I saw this one my senior year of high school. We had to read Frankenstein as seniors in high school where I went, and rather than show us the original movie, for some reason our teacher wanted to show us Young Frankenstein. And oh my gosh, I appreciated how much of the jokes he explained to me, because there's so many like little nuanced jokes,
Mhm.
and I wouldn't have fully gotten them in high school. Like
I am Frau Blucher.
Inga, may I present Frau Blucher?
what was it? Madame Brucker,
Yeah.
right? That's her name.
Nay!
How the name literally means glue. Like my teacher explained that. Shout out to Mr. Platt out there. If this ever gets his way, from Troy High School. And
Mr. Platt was
Yeah.
teaching you what really matters: culture.
Culture, exactly. He and one of the teacher got me into Modern Family, and then also Frankenstein. So isn't that
I
great?
love that.
So anyway, yes, Young Frankenstein, loved it. Hilarious. Gene Wilder, always a pleasure to see on screen.
I love him in this movie. I mean, like, 5 out of 5, no notes. Like, I think it does a good job. I like how they chose to progress his intelligence by them, like, sharing brainwaves through the electrical currents. Because that's, like,
Oh, yes.
you know, it's a 90-minute movie. If you're going to show that, like, that's a good way to do it.
I love
It's
just all the
a
little
great
clever
movie.
jokes of, like, specifically, like, Igor or Igor.
Igor, Frankenstein. It's incredible. It's one of my comfort movies.
I love that actor who plays Igor, because the way he's just, like, he's one of those guys who's already very funny, and also he just kind of looks funny. Like, he doesn't, like, he clearly had to grow up, like, being maybe, like, bullied a little bit for the way he looks.
Yeah.
But when someone adopts that and takes that and turns it into, hey, don't I look funny and this is my comedy,
Yeah.
and just accepting the fact that you seem different, really shows, like, a maturity that I love.
I think that there's, like, a certain level of fineness to his craft too, because he's not just
Exactly.
funny. I feel like he probably takes inspiration from a lot of the earlier Igors, because, like, that is a iconic role at this point. Because it's the 1970s, there's been a bunch of versions of this made, including the Universal classics that we just went over, and including, like, the 1800s play. And he really is meant to be this, like, comedy juxtaposition or foil to the supposedly serious Dr. Frankenstein. And I like that Dr. Frankenstein in this version, he's very flawed. I do wish, like, if it were to honor the book more, he should probably have the struggle of grasping with the morality of what he's done more. He seems pretty okay with it from the beginning. He's like, I created life. That's nice. He doesn't seem to have, like, the moral confusion and questioning that a lot of the other Dr. Frankensteins do have. And I love that the inspector's in this one.
Other favorite character has to be the inspector, just because of his joke of his arm, and when he's playing darts, how, like, his arm, like, clicks.
Yeah. No,
And so,
that's
like,
it. They literally play darts in the 1939 version too. Like, it's an ongoing
okay.
gag. So you have to watch it for that then, because they literally have that ongoing gag in the 1939 film.
Oh my gosh, I just love that.
I think all the characters, all the actors are just such comedic geniuses in it. Like, there's still horror in the creation, but it really is a comedy. And I feel like what's interesting as we get further into these films, that for some reason, outside of what we'll talk about at the very end, Frankenstein and Frankenstein's monster really has become, like, a comedy duo. And I don't know if it's because they're such direct foils of each other and there's such interesting conflict there. But as we go through the 1970s through, like, the early 2020s, it does seem like they choose to make it more of a comedy in addition to horror, which I think is a really interesting choice.
Yeah, it's a great movie. I would give
Great
it
movie.
a 4.5 out of 5. If
I would
not
give it a 5 out of 5. 5 out of 5.
Exactly.
No notes. Great
You know
film.
what? If you're gonna be brave enough, I'll be brave enough, and I'll give it a 5 out of 5.
It
It's
makes
just
me
so
laugh. It's like one of those films that every time I watch it, something makes me laugh. It, like, turns a bad day into a good day.
good. I put Dr. Frankenstein right underneath Henry Frankenstein from 1931, and
yeah.
of course, still hidden the bottom is Victor Frankenstein, the original from the
You
from the
know
novel.
who's hitting the bottom for me on my list is the 1939 Dr. Frankenstein, the son of Frankenstein, because he was an asshole. And then it would be Victor Frankenstein from the book, then Henry Frankenstein. And then at the top is the young Dr. Frankenstein. Love him.
Mhm.
So in 1990, they came out with a film. Frankenhooker is very, very bizarre. just a word of warning, a lot of nudity, a lot of adult themes.
But it's monster nudity, right? So it's okay.
No, it's it's real nudity. But I like this one because the doctor really is the villain. And they make that really, really clear. The doctor continues to lobotomize himself with a drill to make it morally okay with what he's doing. Like, he has these moments where he's, like, morally questioning, like, if I go lure in a bunch of... This is literally the plot, part of the plot. If I go lure in a bunch of strippers with something I made called super crack, is this morally wrong? And then he's like, oh man, maybe it is morally wrong. And he's like, let me give myself a lobotomy. And then he's like, this is fine. I'm helping them. They're already on drugs anyways. So...
Whoa, so he has morals, and because he has morals, he then decides to lobotomize himself to then change his own morality.
Yes, and I think that's
oh my gosh,
really
no wonder this movie was terrible.
Stop! It's a great movie. I think it's interesting that he asks the direct questions of like, is what I'm doing moral or immoral? The love of my life died tragically. I am doing everything I can to bring her back. How do I bring her back? It feels like very peak 80s, like chaotic horror comedy. That's what it feels like. Like the CGI is kind of rough. I personally like this movie though because the monster is a woman. And I think it's interesting to see that perspective. And like I mentioned earlier in the episode, she has the memories of the other women. Mm-hmm. So when she's first brought back to life, she's not quite herself, even though she has the head and the brain of Elizabeth, his love. She's like speaking as if she's these other women. And he's like, oh no.
Elizabeth.
Want a date? Going out? Looking for some action? Need some company?
No, wait, huh? It's Jeffrey.
Got any money?
Money? No, I don't have any money.
I like this film too because in the end, he does suffer the consequences of his actions. And for those of you who want to watch the film, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but it gets crazy. And it's a good amount of like body horror as well as like horror comedy. Because there are some things that you see on the screen that you're like your eye is twitching because that was so uncomfortable to see on the screen. But it's I like it a lot because it is like, again, it makes the Dr. Frankenstein actually the villain, which is not something we always see. And like in my rankings with him as villain, I would put him almost at the very bottom because he is such a jerk, but he really loves his woman. Like he is like, I'm going to cross the boundaries of life and death to get this woman back. And to be fair, he was playing with reanimation. You say
loves this woman. Can you clarify what you mean?
Yes. So
are we talking romantic love or?
So he was engaged before his fiance tragically died in a lawnmower accident. I really like very dry 80s like comedy, and even though it came out in 1990, it feels like peak 80s horror comedy. So if that's what you're into, definitely check it out. I really liked this film. I would give it like a 3.5 out of 5, honestly, because I like that it's a different take. I appreciate that this movie is like, there were consequences for what you did. Here are the consequences. So solid 3.5 out of 5 for me. I really like this movie. If you like raunchy horror comedy, you probably would really like it too. It's kind of making a resurgence over the last couple of years because I had seen it a couple of years ago and nobody had heard about it, and now it's like popping up all over my feed and it seems like people are talking about it more. So it's on Tubi for free if you want to watch it.
Wow, Kylie, so that just tells me that your taste is very avant-garde. It's just ahead of everyone else's a little bit.
That is the rest of the movies I've picked, basically. But I think you have the next film, which is definitely more on theme.
Yes. So the movie is Victor Frankenstein. This movie came out in 2015, starring Daniel Radcliffe and James McAvoy. Daniel Radcliffe plays Daniel Radcliffe plays Igor, and Victor.
That's a very interesting casting. I would have reversed that.
And James McAvoy plays Victor Frankenstein, and so it's not a good movie.
Crippled man can be healed to walk again. What if we could give every life the chance it deserved? Igor, help me change the world.
It seems really bad.
Yeah.
It's not like Frankenhooker bad, because at least that kind of like leans. Don't you dare. No, because it's what I mean is like it doesn't lean into its badness. It's one of those movies that tries to take itself seriously, but cannot. It's just so many questionable things. This is maybe my least favorite Frankenstein doctor of all time.
Is that the one that's rated like a 1.9 out of 9 on Letterboxd? Because, first of all, the casting alone, Daniel Radcliffe is not an Igor type, respectfully. That's not, like, I don't think within his wheelhouse.
So here's the thing. Daniel Radcliffe starts out as a hunchback that's leaned over.
Okay.
And the whole premise is that he is a freak in the circus in the 1800s.
Oh my gosh.
But he taught himself anatomy and is a self-trained physician. So much so that he can perform surgery on the spot if he needs to, and he does at the start. And that happens to be, he does this with a trapeze artist that he's in love with. On the same night that Victor Frankenstein happens to be in the audience, and they both save her life together. And in doing so, Victor Frankenstein becomes very interested in Igor. Victor gives him the name Igor because that's the name of his roommate. So Victor breaks him out of the circus. They flee. They come back to his apartment. And within like the next few minutes of arriving at his apartment, he takes this giant hunch thing and he says to him, like, you're not actually a hunchback. You just have a massive pus-filled lymph or whatever just on your back. And he just goes through this disgusting scene of like draining all the fluid out of it and then cracking his back using chiropractics and then giving him a back brace and says, there you go. You were told you were a hunchback. You're actually a regular guy with a disgusting growth. And just says, wear that back brace for a long time. So you learn to stand up straight. And no one will recognize you. I'm
dead. So does the monster or reanimation come to play at all? Or is it just the story of Igor and Victor?
So it's very much what they try to do. So he enlists Igor to help him because the whole premise is that he as doctor has the science down, but he's not very good at the minute details of connecting all the tissue and muscles of the human body. But Igor is. So he brings on Igor. And what's nice is that he has like this sense of like, you are my equal. But then he struggles a little bit at times of like, no, I saved you from the circus and you have to do what I say because I'm the guy who saved you and you owe me, da-da-da-da-da. But at other times he's like, actually, you're my friend and you know what, we're equals and I'm sorry for being a little sourpuss in the previous scene.
Yeah.
But so there's that whole dynamic going on, and so Igor's like helping him out, but he doesn't realize what the actual experiment is until like later on when they bring a chimpanzee to life using all this, and then they show it off at the university, and that's where the real villain comes in, a rich like a guy from the third richest family in England.
Oh my gosh.
And he's like, ooh, I saw your experiment. I thought you were a lunatic, but now I see this chimpanzee walking around and whatnot. So I'm going to fund you. And really, at the very end, I'm just going to betray you and, leave you for dead and take your experiment and make it my own.
That's insane.
So the monster himself doesn't make an appearance until the very end of the film.
Okay.
And Victor's trying to do it all by himself because Igor refuses to do it because he finds out that Victor is an insane and self-obsessed asshole. Like, here's the thing. At the start of the film, when he first brings Igor into his apartment, he says, "Oh, I have a roommate. His name is Igor, and he's never around, and he's a famous drunk. And you know what? We're going to get away with just calling you Igor if anyone asks."
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, "Yeah, okay, sure, why not?" And then we find out, apparently Igor is dead and frozen in Victor Frankenstein's basement with his eyes gouged out, because that's the eyes he used for the monster.
That's crazy. His
And
eyes gouged out?
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
So he's just got
really
like this
dark.
man he's got his man in his basement just frozen in a block of ice in a very comedic style, just like going like...
Is there any like questioning morality that they have through this? Because I feel like that's an interesting question.
Oh yeah, that's the whole thing. That's the whole thing, is like Igor is that foil to Victor, questioning his morality, but he constantly overlooks
so Victor
his
doesn't
question.
It's
No,
it's
Victor's
all
obsessed because the whole point of his inspiration for the experiment, his motivation, is that his older brother died trying to take Victor out into a snowstorm with him because they wanted to play in the snow as kids. So his older brother died, and so to help bring balance to the universe, as he says it, he wants to bring life to this creature because it's essentially his older brother.
The backstory is really interesting there because it's not from the book. It's just a made up backstory. Because in the book, he's just like, I'm starting to learn about these philosophies in school and learning about science and stuff, and that seems kind of
And he has a southern accent.
Yeah, you know, in my
I'm just
version,
learning about them their philosophies.
In my
just learned about genetics.
In my version of Frankenstein, I'm gonna make sure that he is from the South, and he's gonna maybe Igor is from the South. Is he's contemplating, should we reanimate life? Maybe not.
I don't think that's the way God intended it. So no. The way the morality. So this is how it works. It's very much, the movie's presented as this. So Igor loves this trapeze artist. The trapeze artist also gets out of the circus, and most of the movie is him trying to just like have this relationship with the trapeze artist girl. And she's the one who brings it up to Igor, like, "Hey, I don't trust Victor and what he's doing. Also, he keeps talking about bringing back people from the dead, and that doesn't seem good." And Igor the whole time is like, no, but he's a nice guy. He's a nice guy. It's totally fine. And then Igor's like, "Oh, actually, maybe he's not." So they have this whole toxic relationship that is just weird. And the movie kind of ends with them like killing their own monster together as a team.
So it is interesting, like the concept of how morally gray do you go after you cross the line of creating life, then you just go and kill it again, is a very interesting reoccurring theme. I think when it comes to like characters like these, there's such interesting, I mean, no wonder Mary Shelley wrote this, because there's such interesting philosophical conversation that we could go on for days about how these characters were making these choices morally. And it's interesting seeing how each movie watches these characters try to grasp with that reality. And it sounds like this version, Victor Frankenstein, was like, Victor Frankenstein as a character is like, I'm cool with this. Like, reanimating life, that's fine. And Igor was the one that's like, maybe we shouldn't put our hands where they don't belong. That's just really interesting to me as a whole. And it sounds like an absolutely terrible movie, but
it is, specifically because
it's an interesting concept.
So seriously.
Like, I like the idea that they tried to do a spinoff about Igor and Victor. That's kind of cool. Just wasn't well executed, it sounds like.
No, it wasn't. Oh man.
Well,
so yeah, this version of Frankenstein, that goes on my bottom right there.
Right on the bottom, and then we'll have our official ranking at the end. Okay. Next up, I have Poor Things, which came out I think in 2023. It won a bunch of Oscars. Directed by Yorgos Lanthimos, director of The Lobster, director of The Favorite. He works with Emma Stone a lot on a variety of projects. Essentially, this film takes a very similar theme reanimation of a woman. How they did it in this one was a little bizarre, where the woman was pregnant when she died, so it's the brain of the baby inside the woman's body. So the woman explores humanity, essentially. And I get what he was trying to do as a director. It's like, as humans, when we're developing, we discover that we are very primal in nature, pleasure and pain, having very hypersexual instincts. But I like having the brain of a baby and having very hypersexualized instincts was just not it for me. I was not a fan of that.
I'd never seen this movie, but I had it described to me by people who have seen it. And based off those descriptions, I just did not have motivation to want to go see this movie. It just seemed very weird, like a very surreal.
That director's style, though. He's very surrealist and very, like, I like a lot of his stuff. Honestly, I would have liked a lot of this movie if it hadn't gone back to the brain of a baby being inputted in this woman's head. Because then the rate at which this character is maturing is very bizarre, and there's a lot of other things that this character could have learned about themselves other than pleasure, essentially. That's what hung me up on it. And it was, there were some really interesting parts, like where she discovers cynicism and she discovers human empathy, and like she starts to feel these things for the first time. And it's really interesting, especially with such a talented actress like Emma Stone, watching her experience and feel these things.
You're now crying?
You ran away with me from him.
What a confusing person you are.
You cannot speak like this.
Polite of society, forgot.
But morally, that was something that I really struggled with. And in the end, like, the doctor doesn't really have any consequences for reanimating life either. He just dies because he has cancer, unfortunately, but he dies. He dies a very human death. He doesn't get killed. He doesn't really face the consequences of his actions. He basically attempts to do it again. Willem Dafoe as the doctor, essentially. It is interesting that they play into the creator theme a lot more, because the monster calls the doctor God. So, because the character's name is Godwin. So she, out of context, will be in public places and mean like, God told me that logic is how we approach these situations, or like things like that are just interesting to grapple with. But again, I would rank this like a 2.5, and honestly wouldn't even go on the list because Willem Dafoe as the doctor was very, very different than like any of these doctors, because he did this like as his job. He just kept reanimating life. So I feel like he doesn't even belong on the list. He's kind of his own category. But yeah, I like morally had a hard time with this one. Like a 2.5 out of 5. Great movie in the sense that it's visually stunning, beautiful acting. But again, couldn't get past like the baby brain being inserted into the adult body. That was very, very weird for me. I'm glad I watched it because I'd been curious about it for a long time. And some people had told me so many things about it that it was definitely morally questioning at many parts for me personally. And I'm sure a lot of people will be like, it was fine. And that's fine. That's you. But like for me, where I'm at in my life, those were my stipulations when it came to watching it.
It's good to have those stipulations.
But, in 2024, there is a film.
Yes.
Called
There was a film.
Frankenstein that came out, written by Diablo Cody, directed by Zelda Williams. I'm slightly biased to this film because I met Diablo Cody at a screening of this film. So, Nick, since Catherine Newton is your crush, go ahead and share your thoughts first. Who I also met at that screening.
She's a very beautiful lady. She's not quite on par with my wife, but she's a very beautiful lady.
But what did you think of the film? Like
But what did I think of the film? I thought it was kind of funny. I certainly was entertained. It wasn't my favorite version of Frankenstein, though. Okay. I find it humorous that Frankenstein is moody teenager Frankenstein now. And that all of her problems could have just been solved if she just stopped thinking, oh, woe is me, clearly she went through some trauma, but
Mm-hmm.
if she just actually talked to people instead of just assuming that everyone hated her, you know, she could have at least found a friend. Probably, she was kind of bullied a little bit, right? That's what I
Yeah.
recall. It's been a little while.
Yeah,
She was kind of bullied.
and her mom had just died. And I think also the interesting part about this movie is she didn't actively, at least initially, try to bring the monster to life. She was like at an unfortunate place at an unfortunate time. And the power of electricity upon the gravestone basically pry him
Via a tanning bed.
Well, the tanning bed, yeah, that came into play more later, but like she was literally at her home alone first, being like, I wish I had someone who understood me. And then there's like a zombie that comes into her house and she's like, what? Who is this? And it turns out it's been the man that she's been drawing the headstone of.
Yes. But one of the other things I remember, and this is where I get into the classification moody teenager, I am not fully on the side of Lisa in terms of like, oh, she's such a tragic character. Because I do think some of it is just...
She's totally a moody teenager, and that's what I like about this
movie. She's a moody teenager.
It feels like it takes more from the book in that sense. Because, like, in the book, Dr. Frankenstein is going through the motions, I feel like, every single page. He reminds me, like, as a literary character, Dr. Frankenstein kind of reminds me of Hamlet a little bit. Because he's just going through the most at any given moment. He's, like, having really high highs, really, really low lows all the time. And that's kind of what Lisa is going through, too. Like, when she is happy and feeling on it, she's, like, feels amazing. And then, like, if not, she's going to be, like, the ultimate teenage drama queen. And I think also what I kind of like about this is it is not scientific at all. I love that they use a tanning bed gone wrong, essentially, to bring back life outside of the initial visualization of the zombie that we see. And we're like, what is that? And I like this movie because it's very dry and it's very funny. And I like it because it doesn't necessarily have to make perfect sense. But like, I like it for the same reason that I like the 1974 film, is because it makes me laugh. It is kind of another one of those that's like, hey, we're not going to take ourselves too seriously here. We're going to have some fun within this. This film, Lisa Frankenstein, was a very genuine attempt at making the Dr. Frankenstein funny. Because before that, we've seen a lot of either very, very morally gray or completely unlikable, or those that have like this hero syndrome. But we had yet to see a teenage girl embody the personality of Dr. Frankenstein with this desire to create and perfect life.
That sounds like I get what you're saying, but man, you got to take a step back and really just kind of laugh at that statement you just made. We haven't yet seen a teenage girl do this yet, and that's what we need right now. We need a teenage girl to take on this role.
I'm just saying we got blessed.
Everyone is wondering. Everyone is begging for it. That a teenage girl needs to take on this role.
Well, okay, think about it though. In a lot of these Frankenstein adaptations, they're all men. This is like, at least the first one I had seen, where the Dr. Frankenstein type, although this one is a child, so she's not child, teenager, 17, 18-year-old. This one is not necessarily a seasoned professional in surgery. She's a seamstress. And I think that's like what makes it interesting, is that she stumbles upon this creation and makes it her own. So it's like less morally gray because it was already alive when it came to her.
I don't care that Lisa Frankenstein, is a girl, is the first girl, Dr. Frankenstein. That's totally fine. I thought this was a good film. I thought it was enjoyable, entertaining. I liked the comedy of it. I love the little comedic bits of like it being a teenage girl and going through the teenage girl drama and whatnot.
Teenage girl drama who gets involved in a lot of murders. Like,
exactly.
There's plenty of gore for those.
You just don't know how to handle that type of situation.
No, yeah. And it's more so.
I mean, I wouldn't know how to handle that situation besides call the cops.
when it makes it more relatable, because like I'm not going to mention any spoilers here because this movie only came out last year, but there's a variety of like murders that happen, and she's like a teenager having to deal with that, and I think that's makes it much more human and more relatable as a Frankenstein character, because a lot of them are so intellectual and they're so smart, and it's hard to relate to them because they're so in the science of it all and in the amoralness of it all that a lot of us aren't willing to admit that we'd be curious about being that amoral. But she's literally a teenager with her heart on her sleeve, with a dead boyfriend, and I think she's more relatable as a character that way than some of the other characters that we see.
Oh yeah, I would definitely not. I wouldn't put her at the bottom. I put her not at the top. I guess she's like mid. She's in the middle of the grouping.
I would put her like below Young Frankenstein, but above Son of Frankenstein. Like,
yeah,
perfectly
you know what?
in the middle.
I'll agree with that. I'll agree with you on that one there.
According to our sheet of which doctors we'd let operate on us, basically, or which ones we think are most moral to least moral. The original 1931 movie Frankenstein, he's got a decent arc. Young Frankenstein, Gene Wilder's Frankenstein, followed by Lisa Frankenstein, followed by the book Victor Frankenstein, followed by Son of Frankenstein, followed by Frankenhooker, aka Jersey Boy, and Victor Frankenstein, taking out the bottom together. Those are our official rankings of all the Frankenstein.
I like that. I like where you put the original book Frankenstein, because he very much is kind of like a moody teenage girl in a sense.
He is. He's right by it. That's, yeah. Because the way he writes, he's very much like a moody teenage girl. And that's because it was written by a moody teenage girl who is going through extreme trauma in her life. So you can really see that in the pages as he literally gets fevers and agony over the creation of life that he's made. So in the end, maybe we did some good job philosophizing this after all. But I think it's important to mention before we go, first of all, what are our Lisa Frankenstein rankings before we talk about what's coming out?
I think I would put Lisa Frankenstein with a 3.5. Maybe.
That's what I had too. 3.5 to maybe a 4.
Like a 3 point, maybe a 4, maybe somewhere in between. We can like
a 3.75.
Yeah. Because I feel like it's just fun. It's funny. It's entertaining. It's a good time. It's a good time.
It has a lot of the same like dry, sharp wit as Jennifer's Body. Part of why we chose this is there are a lot of rumblings about Frankenstein remakes, and in the past year or so, a lot more resurgence of Frankenstein as a whole. So I wanted to ask you a couple questions. First, why do we think that's happening? Where did this curiosity come from to talk more about this very particular character that's based off of one novel in the 1800s? It's not even based off of, like, last year, Dracula. We had a whole history section where we talked through every point in history about how there were creatures sucking blood from other beings. In this case, there's so much less of that in history. So where do you think this resurgence has come from to have more Frankenstein in our lives?
See, so you say it's a resurgence, but I don't necessarily think of it in that way. It seems like there's always something about a Frankenstein somewhere. And I think part of that is that it is brilliantly based on a theme that is just always constant in our world, which is the advancement of human technology and the question of whether or not we should be advancing technology in such a way. So
technology or science? Because
science and technology go hand in hand for the most part. So like, let's say like right now, the modern one is AI. There's always controversy about AI. But then you can equate that to like, okay, well, should we create AI? Should we have rules on AI? And that is very similar to the idea of medicinal technology. Should we have a creature or should we bring people back from the dead? Have life after death. So because of that theme that this whole book is based around. I don't think the story ever really just dies out from pop culture. I just think that there are some times when a studio comes around and finally decides to pick up a screenplay to adopt into a movie. So I think for this case, it's been a long enough time where we haven't seen a direct adaptation. I say direct adaptation because just a couple years ago you were just talking about we had the movie Poor Things,
Mm-hmm.
and then we had Lisa Frankenstein before that.
Yeah.
But the one that we're heavily interested in, upcoming in November this year, is going to be the Oscar Isaac's version of Frankenstein. Who's directing that? Do you remember?
It's Guillermo del Toro. So
Guillermo del Toro.
He's the writer of Shape of Water and screenplay writer of Pinocchio. So yeah, I think, and he's the screenplay writer of Guillermo of Frankenstein as well. So the log line for this is very similar. A brilliant but egotistical scientist brings a creature to life in a monstrous experiment that ultimately leads to the undoing of both the creator and his tragic creation. Like you mentioned, it stars Oscar Isaac, it stars Mia Goth, it stars Christopher Waltz, and it stars Jacob Elordi as the monster. So how do you think this is gonna do?
Honestly, I'm not too optimistic about it. I'm optimistic because of a couple things.
Mm-hmm.
I am hopeful because it's Guillermo del Toro's work, and he has a good reputation of making good movies. Shape of Water proved to be very popular, as ridiculous as the premise was. It was still a well-written and directed movie. Oscar Isaac's name is on it. He's a very famous actor. I feel like he does a really great job with most of the roles that he's in. Exception being X-Men Apocalypse, which if you're not a comic book nerd, you don't know what that movie is. I am cautiously optimistic about this movie.
I agree with that. I've seen some of the photos, and I think based on the list of characters that we're seeing here, I could see this attempting to be a bit more of, at least the beginning up to the creation of the monster, a true adaptation of the book. Because in IMDb, Mary Shelley and Guillermo del Toro are credited as the writers, and then it's directed by Guillermo del Toro. So I could see it perform really well. It seems like, though, based on how visually stunning it is, it's meant to be a theatrical experience. So it is something that is going to be very briefly in theaters in October. So by the time this comes out, it probably already is in theaters. But it also is going to Netflix. So
yeah, we should totally have a bonus episode, Kylie, where we watch this movie and we just come back immediately after we watch this movie and just share our initial reactions. Do we like it, or do we not? A fun little side quest.
A side quest.
We should totally do.
Maybe see on our YouTube page, we have some side quest episodes now, so come check those out. That's where we just, talk without structure. There's another film coming out called The Bride in 2026. It's 1930s Chicago. Frankenstein asks Dr. Euphorius to help create a companion. They give life to a murdered woman as the bride is sparking romance, police interest, and a radical social change. This is written and directed by Maggie Gyllenhaal. It stars Jake Gyllenhaal and Christian Bale and Penelope Cruz. And it's apparently coming out next year.
Ooh, okay, so wait. I'm not as familiar with the name Maggie Gyllenhaal.
She's the older sister of Jake Gyllenhaal.
Ah, okay,
so
that's what I was
you would know
about.
her from The Dark Knight. So that I could see being really interesting.
Ooh, Kylie, if I could, for a quick minute, because you opened up the floodgates a little bit for me to comic book nerd out.
Yes, go for it, please.
If I could recommend to you and to any audience member out there if you're looking for another fun iteration of Frankenstein, I would suggest this came out last year, beginning of this year. James Gunn's first installment of DCU, technically. I think it's on HBO Max, or you can probably get off of Amazon Prime or something. Creature Commandos. It's a show. It's one season long so far, and it's just like it's a fun show about some typical movie monsters, and apparently they're real, and they're in a hidden underground prison, and Miranda Waller makes this team of creatures that have to go out and do stuff for her, basically like a Suicide Squad. And the leader of the team is the bride of Frankenstein.
Oh, that's cool.
She gets some interesting backstory to her, and the Frankenstein's original monster is also very much a real person in this show.
Oh, cool.
And he is a love-obsessed stalker of her. And so he's voiced by David Harbour.
Oh
and
my gosh.
It's just, you get David Harbour's voice, coming out of this monster.
I can actually see that. That's really good casting. Like, that's solid. That's crazy. Okay, I definitely will have to check that out. So, it seems like we've got a good TV series based on comic books about Frankenstein and the Bride. Love that there's something about the Bride. 2025, we got Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein. 2026, we have Maggie Gyllenhaal's The Bride. And then, a date TBD is going to be Frankenstein in Romania. Sebastian Stan set to star in film that Rada Jude is writing. This is an article from the Hollywood Reporter that came out August 10th. Essentially, they say that they haven't released any details. Jude just says that he's writing it. His envisionment is that Sebastian Stan will both play Victor Frankenstein and the monster. And the story is to combine real-life existence of a secret CIA prison in Romania with the past legend of the Frankenstein monster. So
interesting.
That seems like the most outlandish out of the ones that we've heard. I could see that one. I could see if people get Frankenstein fatigue, that's the one that will be affected. Honestly.
No, I'm interested by this. That Sebastian Stan is playing both the Doctor and the monster.
It feels like Jekyll and Hyde, though.
No. Bear with me here. God made man in his own image.
Oh, okay.
See how I turned that around for you there?
You did. All right. I can see that. So yeah, I'm curious what that could be. I think, like you said, I get your theory of we've never lost the curiosity, but coming from an IP perspective, it seems like we have had this resurgence where people are like, I want to explore this story in particular more, this 143 pages, at least in my edition of the book, and dive deeper into it, because that is a trend, is that people are really into making some of these IP established stories.
Everyone wants the dark universe, Kylie.
The dark universe. I want LA to make one, and maybe we'll come back with a side quest about the 2025 Guillermo del Toro and just talk about our thoughts for that particular film. So make sure to come back next week, where we will be facing off in a haunted mansion with horrors that exist that we can't even possibly imagine, but maybe it includes Frankenstein's monster, with our wonderful guest DM from last year who's coming back, Casey Jones from Narrative Beats, will be back as our Dungeon Maestro once again. So thanks for tuning in, guys.
Really quick, do you think you're going to survive?
Hypothetically, I'd like to say that I'll sympathize with the monster and survive, but I know once I'm actually in the arena and fighting for my life, there's no chance. I almost died last year. I could see myself dying this year.
You know what? Yeah, and then you left me for dead. You left me for dead, Kylie.
I tried to get us both out. That was a really bad roll at a bad time. And for those of you that want to know what the hell's going on, this RPG will be a continuation of last year's. So make sure to listen to last year's RPG to get the context of what was going on. But thanks for tuning in, guys, and see you next week. Bye, everyone.